you find yourself 5 or 10 years later wondering why you're so exhausted or why certain things in life aren't going well. And it's because when they say you haven't dealt with the loss, you never actually allowed yourself to feel the feelings. But once you do, it's like a valve, it releases.
Welcome to an eye-opening journey into the depths of the human mind with the guidance of Andrew Humberman, a renowned neuroscientist at the forefront of unlocking the mysteries of our brains and behavior. Today's exploration delves into 5 key aspects that shape our perception, actions, and emotional well-being. Let's start with the effects of stress on thinking. You'll discover how stress, a common but powerful force, narrows our attention and affects our cognitive abilities. Next, let's explore the different types of fears and their common path. You will discover the neurological roots that tie various fears together, whether it is the fear of failure or the anxiety of the unknown. Understanding this common path is the first step in conquering these often paralyzing emotions. Then, we will delve deeper into variation in response to fear. You'll discover why fear affects each of us differently, influenced by our unique life experiences and contexts. This segment offers a deeper understanding of personal and collective responses to fear. Our journey then takes a turn into the neuroscience of heartbreak and grief. Here, we will examine the emotional and neurological complexities of loss, providing insights into the process of healing and recovery from deep emotional wounds. Finally, we will address embracing and managing emotional states. You will learn from Humberman how to navigate the turbulent waters of our emotions, transforming them from overwhelming torrents into navigable waterways that enhance our lives rather than control them. Join us as we venture into these complex yet fascinating realms with Andrew Humberman, equipping us with the knowledge to better understand and optimize our mental and emotional health.
In those states of mind, there's another component, which is that for whatever reason, and no one really understands why this is, it feels as if the state that you're in will go on forever. Now, when we're in happy, relaxed states, rarely do we think, gosh, this is going to go on forever. And yet when we are in these unfortunate states of mind, we get the idea somehow, it sort of hijacks our perception of time, and we feel like this is never going to stop. If we turn to the body and certain behaviors, we talk about what those are, we are able to move ourselves along the autonomic continuum. And at that point, when we've done that successfully, and it's actually quite straightforward to do, we are able to think about things differently. We start to get a sense that the way we feel might not be the way we're going to feel forever. And it's in those shifts that we start to realize, my mind actually is not my best friend at these extremes, but there's a lot more to it. You're only getting the tip of the iceberg in those states. So that's why I say, if you can't control the mind with the mind, look to the body to control the mind.
Humberman begins by explaining how stress narrows our cognitive focus, making it difficult to shift our thoughts away from the stressor. This narrowed focus, while evolutionary beneficial in acute danger, can be detrimental in modern life where stressors are often psychological. Stress hijacks our attention, locking us into a tunnel vision that impedes our ability to engage with a broader range of thoughts and solutions. He further explores how stress distorts our perception of time and future. Under stress, there's a tendency to perceive the stressful state as never-ending. This skewed perception amplifies the impact of stress, making us feel trapped in a cycle of anxiety and worry, hindering our ability to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Most importantly, Humberman discusses how certain behaviors and activities can help us break free from the grip of stress. He highlights techniques like controlled breathing, physical exercise, and engaging in creative or absorbing tasks as effective ways to shift our brain's focus, alter our thought patterns, and reduce the physiological and psychological impacts of stress.
A few years ago, a postdoc in my lab, who's now a staff scientist, Dr. Melise Yilmaz-Balban, she has a long name, excellent researcher, studies fear, did a very broad-scale survey of the general public, thousands and thousands of entries, created this kind of cloud of bubbles. The bigger the bubble, the greater number of people that had that fear. We saw some interesting things. So heights, certainly. Public speaking, certainly. Doctor's office and syringes, certainly. Public speaking fear is very common. Social isolation fear is very common. But we also saw some things like dogs. There are a number of people who are afraid of dogs, which is inconceivable to me because I love dogs so much.
Exactly the same.
Yep, but people form these associations, whether or not through experience or through indirect experience, observing others. I think public speaking is one of the greatest. Fear of dying. It's not funny, but figure of speech. I never think about dying and being afraid of dying. I think about all the scary things that could happen while I'm living. But there are many people who are just intrinsically afraid of dying. And so that's a big one. For people that don't swim, fear of drowning. For people that swim, less so. For people that have some sort of psychiatric disorder, genuine psychiatric disorder, like obsessive compulsive disorder, which is not just obsessive compulsive personality, but obsessive compulsive disorder, fear of being discovered and the shame that they have around their obsessions and compulsions. These are true OCD is very common.
Do they all live in the same place? All of these different fears, are they all existing in the same place? So
I was rattling off and I didn't answer your question to the more important point, so forgive me. The short answer is they have a final common pathway, which is increased autonomic arousal, and that is funneled through a couple what we call limbic structures, among others.
Huberman begins by outlining the various types of fears that humans experience. From the dread of failure to the anxiety of public speaking and the apprehension of social disapproval, these fears, despite their apparent differences, are underlined by a shared neural process. This revelation brings a new understanding of how fear operates within us, regardless of its source. He delves deeper into the common pathway that these fears trigger in the brain. Huberman explains that, irrespective of the type of fear, there is an increase in autonomic arousal, a physiological response preparing the body to face perceived threats. He highlights the critical roles of specific brain structures like the amygdala, known for its involvement in fear processing, and the hypothalamus, which regulates the autonomic nervous system. This pathway forms the crux of how our brains and bodies experience and respond to fear. Furthermore, Huberman emphasizes that fears are highly contextual and can be profoundly influenced by individual experiences and perceptions. What might trigger fear in one person may not have the same effect on another, underscoring the personalized nature of how we experience and react to fearful situations.
Which is really, to me, one of the more fascinating areas of the brain. Harbors neurons that create a body-wide and brain-wide response to something that the higher order areas of the brain, like the forebrain, see and perceive as dangerous, as threatening. So the short answer is yes, it all funnels through hypothalamus, amygdala, stria terminalis, and autonomic nervous system. That's a final common pathway. But in terms of the variety of different things that can stimulate fear and the ways that they can do that, that is highly contextual. So the forebrain, this real estate in the brain right behind the forehead, is incredible because it's sort of free real estate for you to customize for your life, according to what happens to you early on. So for instance, you might not be at all afraid of heights. And you say, well, why is that so? Well, maybe when you were a kid, you were one of those maniacs that doing, in the States, we call them cherry drops, the kids that could, swing on their feet and then jump off the bar. And then other kids are timidly crawling to the top of the thing, don't even want to go up the ladder to the slide. There's a ton of variation, and that variation does not exist in the kind of deeper circuitry, the final common path circuitry. It exists in the learning that we experienced early in life.
Huberman explains that responses to fear vary significantly among individuals. This variation is not random, but is heavily influenced by a person's early life experiences and the context in which they encounter fear. Factors such as childhood environments, past traumas and learned coping mechanisms all play pivotal roles in shaping how one might react to a fearful situation in adulthood. He further emphasizes the critical impact of immediate post-trauma experiences on long-term fear responses. Humberman highlights that what occurs immediately after a traumatic event can significantly determine the trajectory of an individual's fear response. Supportive, calming environments may mitigate long-term fear effects, whereas additional stressors can exacerbate them. Delving into the realm of clinical interventions, Humberman discusses the use of ketamine in treating trauma-related fear responses. Ketamine, a drug known for its dissociative properties, is used to help individuals detach from extreme emotional states associated with trauma. He sheds light on how this can be a crucial tool in preventing the solidification of intense fear responses and aiding in the recovery from traumatic experiences.
Is that like exposure therapy for limbic friction then?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, what you're training and improving when you're getting better at dealing with stress is this ability to tolerate high amounts of adrenaline in your body and to think clearly and function well. I mean, adrenaline is epinephrine, and just a little bit of physiology. It's released from the adrenals, obviously, above the kidneys. That gets your body organs amped up and energized. It can't cross the so-called blood-brain barrier. You have a high restriction fence that we call the blood-brain barrier around the brain. Keep bad molecules out. Adrenaline, therefore, is released also within the brain from a little cluster of neurons called locus coeruleus. The name doesn't matter. So when you are stressed, your brain and your body both wake up, and that adrenaline hijacks certain systems, narrows your visual focus, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at almost all stress inoculation protocols, cold water, ice bath, cold shower, cyclic hyperventilation, those all do the same thing. They generate a lot of adrenaline release in the brain and a lot of adrenaline release in the body. But it's different if the adrenaline in the brain and body is evoked by you, that you did it. Because under conditions under which you did the ice bath deliberately and now you're wide awake and really, really alert, there's this feeling that you have options. It wasn't done to you, but you can train up an ability to, for instance, think clearly and calmly. Maybe even do some simple math problems in your head, or maybe try and relax while there's all this adrenaline in your system. And that carries over so that when we've all done it. You're driving along, the person in front of you stops short, and you're almost in the accident, right? There's that moment where you could panic, or that moment where you could, road rage, or that moment where you could freak out. But if you are familiar with the feeling of adrenaline in your brain and body, you navigate that in a calmer way. How? Well, because adrenaline is generic. There's no adrenaline for the car crash, adrenaline for the heights, adrenaline for the relationship situation. It's all the same. So we can get better. We can raise our stress threshold, as I like to refer to it.
Humberman starts by drawing parallels between the brain activity and emotional states experienced in grief and the loss of love. He explains how both trigger similar neural pathways, involving areas of the brain associated with emotional regulation, attachment, and reward processing. This similarity provides a biological basis for why the emotional impact of heartbreak can be as profound as grieving a loss. Delving deeper, Humberman characterizes grief as a motivated state, a natural response aimed at bridging the gap created by loss. He suggests that grief propels individuals to reconcile with the absence, whether through reminiscing, seeking closure, or redefining identity. It's an adaptive process, guiding us through the pain towards healing. Further, Humberman discusses the heightened challenge of breakups for young individuals. He highlights that for them, a breakup is not just the loss of a partner, but also the shattering of a perceived future. This loss can be particularly destabilizing, as it disrupts their trajectory of self-discovery and future planning, intensifying the grief process.
to just get that much more focus. You're taking that autonomic arousal, that narrow aperture and that energy, and you're putting it onto something that moves your life forward. So in some cases that's good because you still need to function. But it can give you here I'll just say, it gave me the illusion that I was working through something because you get all the accoutrements and rewards of hard work. But what you don't do is remap that space-time closeness map. And then I guarantee you find yourself 5 or 10 years later wondering why you're so exhausted or why certain things in life aren't going well. And it's because when they say you haven't dealt with the loss, you never actually allowed yourself to feel the feelings. But once you do, it's like a valve, it releases.
Humberman emphasizes the importance of embracing our emotions, including those that we often fear or avoid. He explains that emotions, regardless of their nature, hold valuable information about our perceptions and reactions to the world around us. By acknowledging and understanding these emotions, we can gain insights into our behaviors and decision-making processes. Embracing emotions is not about being controlled by them, but about recognizing their influence and learning from them. He also delves into the concept of using emotional states as a source of motivation. Humberman suggests that emotions can be powerful drivers that propel us towards our goals. However, he cautions against over-reliance on any one emotional state. He warns that while tapping into emotions like fear or excitement can provide a temporary boost, relying on them excessively can lead to burnout or negative long-term consequences. Furthermore, Humberman advises on the importance of balance in managing emotional states. He advocates for developing a toolkit of strategies, such as mindfulness, controlled breathing, and cognitive reframing, to modulate our emotional responses. This balanced approach ensures that we harness the motivational power of our emotions without being overwhelmed by them.